What is up, gamers? Welcome back to another Predecessor video. We're doing a tier list for V 1.0. Let's get right into this one. We get to start off our tier list with Countess, who I think is actually pretty average. If you can snowball with the hero, she will do pretty well. I don't think she's a great mid laner. I don't think she's a great off laner, but I do think she is pretty decent in the jungle if you can get away with it. But I don't think she is too insane per se, but if she can scale, if she can get those passive stacks, she's definitely pretty solid. But general rule of thumb here, I'm going to take the average one out from all three roles and put her in B tier. We move to Crunch, who in my opinion is actually pretty shit. The reason he is shit is because he gets countered. As a hero on its own, as a hero in lane, he's actually pretty solid. But there's too many counters to him. There's too many champs that kind of just make him not be able to play the game. So unless you're last pick, I don't recommend picking Crunch, because once you pick this champion, you are going to hate yourself. I picked this champion like twice in my last 50 games, and every time I picked him earlier than I should have. And I suffered because it's very hard to basically be able to 1v3, 1v5 was the champion compared to some other bruisers that are in the game. So for that reason, I am going to put him in situational. Moving to Dekker, probably the first S tier hero in this patch. She is still very strong. She is one of the better supports in the game, alongside another support that we'll get to talk about later on in the video. But yeah, she is definitely very strong. I do recommend newer players to play Dekker if they want to get used to the support role, because she makes it very easy. We move to Drongo, who, if I'm being honest, for new players, I do recommend Drongo over other ADCs. The reason is because he's actually pretty simple to play. He's very disruptive. He's very safe. He has everything that you kind of want as an ADC. He's a very good all-around kit. He doesn't really lose lane to any specific matchup, because he can generally do fine in lane. He scales completely fine. He is a bit weak early on for the first level, so be careful trying to get level 2 on him. But apart from that, I think he is absolutely insane. And yeah, I do actually have to keep him in broken, even though he did get nerfed. Alright, 3 in a row, and I already feel bad about my tier list, because this is another hero that's going to go straight up in S tier, and he is going to go straight at the forefront of my list. He is absolutely broken right now. The change to the slight buff that he had honestly just made him absolutely insane, and I am expecting the champion to be nerfed next patch quite significantly too, because he is a must ban right now. He is the #1 must-ban hero in the game. You can play a lot of tanks into it. Maybe that will feel good. A lot of tanks, maybe a tanky support, maybe something like a Drongo ADC and the Gideon mid laner, and just, you know, try to make it so it's very hard for him to get resets off. But he's very strong in lane. He's very strong, and if players are picking heroes that can die to this thing, it's a rough one, man. So yeah, you could say a bit situational and stuff like that, but he's too good right now. He is too good to not put in broken. We move to Gadget, who has probably gotten the biggest nerf this patch. And although she did get very much nerfed, she's actually still pretty solid. She is one of the preferred mid laners that people pick in comp play still, but I'm still basing my tier list on ranked gameplays. So I'm not going to go for comp, for competitive Predecessor, for tournaments. I'm not going to base it off that. I'm still going to base it off ranked. She's very solid. I'm debating going very strong, if I'm being honest, because I think she is still very strong. So it's between A+ and A, and if I had to be honest, I'll probably still put her at A+, because I still think she is very good of a mid laner. Of course, her pressure in lane is not great, but she can still do a lot, and she is still a very broken off laner. So yeah, if you guys have not seen her in off lane, I do recommend checking her out. There's some people who play her who do perform really well. It's very easy to do well on offlane with her, and it's kind of criminal. Moving to Gideon, who again got nerfed, and in my personal opinion, he is not as strong as he once was. I had him pretty up. Usually I always had Gideon in S tier or A+. I think this time around I'm going to put him in solid. I don't think he is of course, bad. That's why he's in solid. I think he's definitely good, but I definitely don't think he's at the same level he once was. So we're gonna put it at A, which is honestly pretty justified in my opinion. I get to talk about Greystone, and in my personal opinion, he is a bit situational. There's not really many times where I feel like, hey, Greystone would do really well here, but there's also not a lot of Greystone players. And I think the reason is because this hero's a bit boring to play, right? And people would rather play a hero that is weaker than him or stronger than him, but is way more fun, right? And people would rather play a hero that's more fun than play something like Greystone. So although I don't have enough experience on Greystone on this patch, he does feel very situational. I don't see him picked up at all. He's probably picked up a decent amount in lower tier games, but in the games that I'm in, I don't see him much, and I kind of understand why, right? I do feel like he is not that strong right now, but you can probably get away with him in some matchups. Grux is a hero that was also dominating the tier list for the last few patches, but I do feel like players, even in lower tier lobbies now, are understanding to how to play against the Grux a bit more, understanding that you need to space correctly, understanding that there's a lot of counters to the Grux, and even though he's a very good lane bully, hitting him as a jungler is really good and really easy to do. So with that in mind, I actually think he is pretty average. This might be a shock to a lot of people, but I honestly don't rate him that highly anymore. I think you can deal with him pretty well. I do think he can pop off in lane and make life pretty miserable for some people. He also is very good at taking objectives if he's playing jungle, but I do feel like his ganks are very easily avoided and very readable. Moving on to Howitzer, he is one of the better mages in the game. I would say top 2 mages in Pred right now. I think he is one of the better champs in the game. He doesn't really have too many bad matchups. The only one really disgusting matchups he has is against Wraith in mid lane, and the reason is because he's a massive hitbox, and Wraith can kind of just outpoke you from very far away, although you have poke of yourself. The matchup, although it's pretty rough for Howie, it can still flip depending on your jungler. But apart from that, this champ is completely insane. I was considering putting him S tier, but I'm actually gonna put him at the top of A+, and I don't think there's gonna be anyone who's going to pass him on the A+ tier list moving forward for today's tier list. Alright, we get to talk about Kallari, and honestly, I don't think she's bad. I don't think she's bad at all, but the issue is when Feng Mao exists and he does her job much easier, much better, and just much safer, there's not really a point to really choose Kallari at this state. I would say there's been a lot less people playing Kallari, and again, the reason is what I just mentioned. But I also think she can actually work in some specific matchups when there's a lot of unsafe laners where she can snowball and do stuff like that. She's very strong, by the way. She's very strong in those matchups. She turns from like pretty average into like shitty matchups to like very strong. So it's very 50-50 when ranking someone like Kallari. Just for this tier list, I'm gonna go situational, just because of what I just mentioned. I do think she can be very strong, and I would rather play Kallari than some other champions who are rated much higher, like Grux or Countess or even Gideon, to carry my games. But just know that it doesn't always go in your favor, and if you're not really ahead on the champion, you might as well just not be playing the game. Alright, moving to Kai. I think Kai is pretty decent. I would say I would recommend it to newer players. Newer players will perform much better with Khaimera because it's pretty simple, it's pretty understandable. He can snowball pretty well with him. The kit, it just basically like covers a lot of issues that newer players tend to fall in. So for that reason, it tends to be a very good champion for newer players. But I do actually think you usually pick Kai to counterpick something like Wraith Rewind, counterpick something like Phase Ultimate, and other champs that, you know, do get completely ruined by cleanse. So for that reason, I'm actually thinking of going situational with this hero as well, but he's not bad at all. So I am gonna put him under situational, but I do think generally he's average. but I'm gonna put him against situational because you kind of want to counter pick with this hero. Moving on to Kira, Kira's pretty good, man. She did get nerfed, and the nerf is actually pretty sizable to her trading pattern in lane. The reason I say that is because the trading got nerfed pretty decently, but her all-in with the ultimate actually got buffed, so there's more like epic moments you can get with the ultimate, but generally like her burst pattern is not as strong as it once was, so I used to have her pretty far up. I think I had her in broken in the last patch. I think with the nerf to her all-in lane, I think she definitely falls down a tier, maybe possibly even two. I still think she is very, very good though. She is very evasive. She is also a very good scaling option. I'm probably gonna put her at A plus, at the bottom of A plus, because she actually does pretty well in most matchups. There's some matchups that are cursed, but she's honestly like still pretty good. Moving on to Belica. The one good thing I'll say about Belica is that she scales really well. She does scale really well, but her laning is atrocious. The only reason I would ever pick Belica over other mages is if I'm playing into a Morigesh, into a Countess, into any hero that doesn't really have a good early lane in mid lane. In support, it's a little bit different. You can usually get away with Belica a bit more. I do actually want to throw her in situational, but at the same time, just because that weak category is feeling lonely, I think it's time for me to put her down there, even though she did get buffed. Again, no hate to Belly. I do think she is one of the better scaling mages in the game. Once she is at 4 items, she is absolutely insane, but getting there is a bit of a joke. It's a massive joke, actually. It's very, very hard. It's very criminal. Again, there's some matchups that allows you to do that, so that's a reason why I actually want to put her situational, but there's very few of those matchups, so because there's very few of those matchups, I'm going to put her in weak tier. Morigesh is one of those heroes that also needs to scale pretty well. Her laning is not quite horrible, but it's also not quite great. Usually I want to pick Morigesh in matchups where I maybe have a Murdock, for example. So we can like double global ultimate of some sorts and try to just burst somebody late game that has 80% HP with the ultimate from Morigesh and then into a Vanquisher like snipe from Murdock. It becomes very, very strong. So I would say she's situational, but she is situational on your comp over the enemy comp. Of course, there's some mid laners that you don't want to play her into, but overall I don't think she is too bad. Again, she scales amazingly, just like Belica does, but I don't recommend her over the other mages who I rated very highly in the tier list already. And talking about Murdock, we go to Murdock, who is actually pretty insane. He doesn't really have too many bad matchups. I think the only bad matchup he has is Twinblast, I believe. I think Twinblast just paces this hero. Maybe Wraith as well kind of does that, but he's actually pretty good, right? He has good laning. He has a global ultimate. He has a lot of items that he can abuse, and I actually had a video yesterday on this hero, and I was decently surprised. He also just feels the best out of all the carries, just generally feeling wise. It feels like my autos are connecting. It just feels really, really nice. Do I think he's better than Drongo? I don't know. I personally would rather play Drongo, but I do think that Murdock is pretty close with Drongo. I don't want to put him at the same tier, but I am going to put him at A plus right after Howitzer because I think that is just a fair spot for him actually. Moving to Muriel, who I had rated pretty highly last patch. She did get nerfed last patch as well. I'm not seeing her as much as I want to. Again, also a hero that has a global ultimate. She actually plays really well when you are playing not for dual lane. When you're playing for dual lane, you can play for dual lane with her for the first few levels because her early levels are really nice in dual lane with her Q. However, once you kind of hit level 6, you kind of want to play towards mid lane, towards off lane with the global ultimate, and you want a really safe ADC that can kind of farm like Twinblast, like Drongo, and stuff like that, right? So she's very good when you play around that. I think she is very solid. So yeah, I'm actually just gonna put her straight up in solid. I think she is very, very good if you play for what she's good at. If you play through her lane, through dual lane, unless you're already hard winning the lane, it might be a little bit tricky, a little bit risky, but try to play for the numbers advantage game, and you will get success with this hero for sure. Alright, we get to talk about Narb, who I know a lot of people love Narb. The reason why a lot of people love it is because it's also pretty easy to play. He is honestly pretty easy to do to do well with, right? I completely understand that. I do think he is generally pretty decent. I don't see him too much because I see the other supports a bit more. Of course, with Zinx coming out, she's also there contesting other heroes like Muriel and Dekker that I already touched up on. So I have to compare Narb with other supports, and for that reason, I'm gonna put him in average tier. Probably at the top of average tier. I do think he's completely fine, by the way. I'm just not seeing enough because I think there's much more supports that are being desirable by other support players who play the role, and I completely understand why. FaZe is one of those supports who I think is actually pretty situational. You want to pick her into something like a Riktor lane maybe, or just any dive comp sort of enemy team composition. So you kind of want to pay attention to what the enemy team is picking. She's a pretty sleeper kind of pick, so you're kind of not doing too much. You're not really controlling the game per se, but you kind of get to respond to what the enemy team is doing. I do think she's situational from what I just said. I don't know where to put her in the situational tier. Maybe just around here. I don't rate her too highly, so there's that. I might be a little bit too mean on FaZe here, but I'd rather play any other support, right? This is a funny one. Rampage was actually C tier for me last batch, and I will tell you right now, this guy is completely insane. I think we get to put him in S tier this time around. The buffs to Rampage were absolutely insane. Wouldn't be surprised to see a little small adjustment to Rampage. I don't think he will be getting like heavily adjusted, but I do think we'll get to see a few numbers change here and there because he is definitely outperforming some other tanks. I do also think he's a bit weaker later on in the game when it comes to that, but if you perform really well through the mid game, I think you should be like kind of controlling the game and outright winning it. If the game goes to maybe 40 minutes, then you might have some issues, so try to win the game early. He is completely insane right now, and I definitely recommend playing him. Revenant is another hero that got buffs, I believe, with his 4-shot dealing, I believe, 0.5% more damage or max HP more damage. I'm seeing him picked up a lot more. Honestly, I think people are rating him a bit too low. Like they're like, I think he's situational or stuff like that. The best thing about Revenant is that he can just ult the jungler in pit fights, in objective fights, and you just take away their smite, right? And that is actually very valuable. The reason with playing Rev is you need to control the lane pretty well. You need to understand how to CS correctly and also be aggressive to a certain point, and I think a lot of people fail to do that correctly with Revenant. I don't think he is bad at all, though. I think I'm gonna put him in average. Just, you know what, let's put him at the bottom of average. It doesn't really matter. He could go all over. I don't think he's bad, though, and I think if you are a good Revenant player, you will do very well with this hero. And also, try to play a support that is aggressive with him. Don't play a Narb. Don't play a FaZe. Just play something aggressive. This guy needs to get leads. If you don't get leads, you're kind of just trolling. So, try to play an aggressive support alongside your Revenant. Oh, we're talking about my GOAT, Riktor. I love Riktor, man. If I was biased, I would put him S tier. He's not S tier. He's pretty damn good, though. I actually think straight up, I'm just gonna put her A+. Just about here, honestly. He does really well in offlane right now. He does really well in jungle. He does really well in support. He's honestly pretty good, man. And the skin, just having the skin is actually just a buff to your gameplay. I feel like everyone who uses his skin just performs 50% better than he usually would on the normal skin. Maybe it's a skin buff kind of thing. I don't know. It's just weird, man. But Riktor feels good right now. When I play him, I feel good playing Riktor. Honestly, the champ feels really good right now. Alright, so we talk about Serath, who is a hero that I do see get picked up by junglers who want to carry games. I think it's completely fair because she can actually snowball pretty well if played correctly. Where do I think she lands? I think she probably lands in solid, probably at the bottom of solid. You kind of gotta be careful about the enemy team comp for sure, but I mean, the thing about Serath, man, is if you're a good Serath player, if you can dodge a lot of the enemy abilities with your own abilities and understand a lot of her mechanics, you will perform on this hero because she does have a higher skill ceiling than the majority of the other heroes in the tier list already. And yeah, it's mainly just a skill issue on being good at this hero. I think she is pretty good right now, though. We get to talk about Sev, who has been very strong for a while now. The reason he's strong is mainly because of that Q buff that he had, I believe, a patch ago. That has definitely made a lot more people play Sevarog. Of course, there's still some matchup that he sucks at, but generally speaking, man, Sev is very good both in jungle and in solo lane. I think he is one of the better tanks you can play with alongside Riktor and Rampage. I would take him over a Steel, for example, right? You of course need to pay attention to your stacks. They are very important, but overall, man, he is pretty good. I'm trying to see where to put him, man. I think I'll put him right here. The reason I'm not putting him above Riktor is probably because Riktor plays more roles than a Sev does, so I'm just giving Riktor a bit of a bias from my side there, but overall he is very strong right now. A lot of people hate on Shinbi, and I don't understand why. Because on this hero, you can just go AFK and outscale your enemy laner. And it's pretty easy to do so while maintaining a good CS and offlane. She's very solid, man. Like, I don't see the hate around it. She just does everything you kind of need her to do. You can play her for split push. You can play her to blink in on an enemy carry or an enemy mage and just one-shot them. There's a lot of different ways you can perform on this hero. And you just have to play a bit safe early on, but it's very easy to play safe on this hero. You have ranged abilities to let you CS, and if you understand how to control a wave in offlane, it's not too hard. It's not too hard. Alright, it's ya boy Steel. Where do I think Steel is, actually? I think he's pretty solid, right? Like, somebody who has the abilities that he has, he can never really be too bad. I think in jungle might be his best role, although he's slow, right? He's a bit slow in the jungle, but I think it's fine if you're slow in the jungle. In this patch, I think it's completely fine to be a bit slow, because you can just play for late game team fights and just be completely fine. One team fight is all that matters, unless you're too slow and you're like permanently AFK, that's a bit too bad. But hey, every time you got that ultimate in the early game, you're usually gonna get a blink or a kill, so you can hate Khaimera lane if you need to and just farm slowly if you have to. Also, Fire Blossom is not as bad as people think it is. You can definitely go Fire Blossom to speed up your clear. I think he's solid, man. I think he's solid. He might maybe average, but I'm gonna put him solid because like the abilities he has are like too good in team fights. They're like honestly too good. So yeah, I'm honestly gonna put him in solid. All right, Faye. The one bad thing about Faye is that she is unsafe, but she can definitely carry games. You kind of want to pay attention on the enemy comp. There's some heroes that can completely ruin you, like Countess and like Khaimera, like Zarus. Things that can cleanse you. Also, cleanse as a crest is also pretty insane. So with all those counters in mind, where I would usually put this hero at A+ because she's honestly pretty good. She's very good in lane. She can out DPS most mid laners in lane and try to get a favorable lead. I would generally put her here through her laning and through her scaling potential, but there's a lot of counters to her, so for that reason I'm going to put her at the top of A tier. Alright, we get to talk about Twinblast, who in my opinion is just a better Kira. I don't think he scales better than Kira, but he has better laning than Kira in my opinion. He's also pretty good at honestly spacing enemy heroes. The on-hit build is still very good. You just deal a ton of damage on this hero, and you just get a lot of dashes in team fights if you're hitting your auto attacks because of the reset on it. And I think it's pretty good, man. I think it's pretty good. I definitely value this hero quite heavily in the ADC hero. I don't think he's as good as the other two ADCs that I mentioned, but usually this champion is pretty safe in lane, and he can build 2 stacking and scaling option items, and he can go crazy in late game team fights. This might be a hot take on Zarus. I don't think he's as good as everyone is making him out to be. And I know this is crazy, right? Because he's been S tier in every single one of my patches, but the last nerfs, man, I think he's no longer S tier. I think he's gonna be A+. And I don't know where in A plus I'm gonna put him. I think I'm gonna put him at the top, maybe. I think to the top of A plus. That's completely fair. But yeah, it's weird, man. I don't think he snowballs as well as he does. I don't think he wins lane as hard as he does anymore. I think you can stop this thing. I think you can kill it. Of course, if he's snowballing, then that's an issue. But like, I don't know. Like, I'm not feeling the Zarus that I felt 2 patches ago. You know what I mean? So I have to put him A plus. I still think he's very good, of course, because that character, that kit cannot ever be too bad, even with shittier numbers. But yeah, I don't think he's S tier alongside those other 4 heroes, man. I don't think so. Moving to Sparrow, honestly, straight up, she's situational. Like, this is all I can say about Sparrow. She is situational. Same thing as FaZe. You cannot just pick this champion and just not get completely ran down. You have to pick it in the right team composition against the right team comp. She can do damage. Of course, she is the best scaling ADC in the game, but man, it is risky to play this hero. It's risky, and unless the enemy team doesn't know how to abuse you, yeah, you might have some issues. You might have some issues if the enemy team knows how to play. A lot of people are still hating on Wraith, and I don't understand that. This champion is insane right now. Genuinely, this champion is insane. If you hit your stuff, and I'm gonna say this, for every hero I'm talking about, I'm always assuming people will just hit their auto attacks, hit their abilities, and stuff like this. This hero is a massive skill issue to a lot of players who play the game, and that's just the god honest truth. It's completely fine to be bad at this hero. I'm not great on this hero either. I think I'm pretty average on this hero. Sometimes I get a good game on him, sometimes I get a really bad game on him, but he is so unbelievably strong right now. I'm considering maybe S tier, but if I'm being honest, I think he is going to be put at A plus because I do think he is very good in mid lane and he is very good in the ADC role. This champion is absolutely insane right now. The only issue with this hero is if people go double tank, then you have a bit of issues trying to nuke the tanks down. So be careful of that one. Don't just pick Wraith into double tanks for the love of God. That might be a little bit too much for the Wraith player unless he's very much snowballing. Iggy will always have a niche in this game just because of the turrets. He will always have value in team comps because he can just do objectives very fast. He also is very good in mid lane to getting pressure and just apparently shoving wave. You can never fall behind on this hero because he CS's for you. Like, you literally cannot miss CS on this hero. Very, very, in quotation marks, beginner-friendly hero. For people trying to understand the kit or just trying to understand the Predecessor as a whole. So for that reason, I think he is very, very strong, and I will just make him be a better Gadget, in my opinion. I think he is just straight up a better Gadget. Alright, where do I think Kwang is? I think Kwang is also very strong. I think he is very good at being a lane bully. You want to build damage on him. I don't think Tank Kwang really works. You can go damage HP items, of course, and then you can opt for a bit tanky items at 4th, 5th, and 6th items. But I think this champ is really good at making sure you are not winning lane and off lane. In jungle, he's alright. He's decent. In offlane, he's very, very strong, and he usually just says no to losing lane. So unless you really misplay on this hero, it's very hard to lose lane. I think I will put him. Where do I put it? I think I'll put him just about here. Honestly, I think he's pretty good. Near the top of A plus. I think it's completely fair. If I made this tier list 5 days ago, I would have put Argus at around A plus. After a game or two on this hero, I can definitely tell you right now I was wrong, and he is definitely S tier broken. One of the better mages, or probably the best mage in the game right now. He is very, very strong. He can shove you out of lane. He has a lot of uptime compared to other mages, and he also has a lot of range. He also has a lot of damage, and all that in mind, you just have to put him in S tier, right? I think he is completely insane. You know what's weird? I'm not seeing a lot of Grim. I'm not seeing a lot of Grim, and I don't understand why, because I still think he is very strong. I think this hero is still very, very strong. And I would put him at the same boat as Kira. He scales extremely well. He's a great lane bully. He's pretty safe in comparison to other ADCs. So I cannot really put him in solid because I feel like that is an injustice if I put him anywhere here. So for that reason, I'm going to put him honestly in between both of these mages. Also, he's very good in mid lane. He is very good at running some of these mages down with the spell shield and the auto attack slow. Yeah, it's actually pretty disgusting. Aurora got nerfed the second most out of every other hero in the last patch after Gadget. Mainly it was the wall nerf that was really massive, but the issue with that nerf is that in late game teamfights it usually only takes one wall to really clean up a very good fight. So if you're really good with your walls, that nerf doesn't really matter too much, but I still think that even in the early game, although she definitely got nerfed with the changes to the map where you can use the wall to go over walls and stuff like that as well. I mean, the skill ceiling just went up even higher, right? And like with time, this hero, a lot of people are just going to perform and perform again and just generally do better. I think she's very, very good. I don't think she's a ban option anymore, considering that these heroes exist up here. I still see people banning this hero because of last patch. So people need to understand that she is very, very strong, but I don't think she is broken. I think this is a fair spot for her. I'll put her right here, actually. You know what? Let's... And honestly, yeah, I'll put her in the middle. I think she's in the middle of A+. I think that's completely fair. Where do I think Terra is, man? Like, okay, so Terra, amazing in lane. She barely loses lane to anyone. Maybe Kwang she goes even with. And then there's a bit of skill gap depending on how, like, who's playing what, right? But, like, she's very good in lane. She's very good in skirmishes. She's very good at taking objectives, but she's pretty weak in team fights unless you're doing really well in the head or they have a lot of CC, which is majority of their team fight potential. In that case, she can do pretty well in team fights. You could say it's a bit situational, but I don't think it's about situation. I think you pick Terra in the hopes that you're going to run down your enemy laner. I don't think is she strong enough to be A+? I don't know. I mean, yeah, I have to put her A+, right? I have to put her A+. I think we put her A+, we put her near the end. Again, she has a lot of good things about her, but she also has some negative things. And I think the good things outweigh the negatives quite significantly, so I think this position is completely justified. And finally, we get to talk about the new hero, Zinx, who is, to cut it short, completely broken. Absolutely broken. Bro, this hero is insane. And unfortunately, people might not perform as well on her because they might not understand why she is that good. The reason she's good is because she is basically a backline enchanter that provides a lot to your team, right? Basically, she has a very good dump sort of damage kit where you can just throw your spells and then just backline for your team with a lot of healing. And honestly, the value on the ultimate is absolutely insane when you use it on tanks. You also get to control it yourself. It's also very hard to read when she ults somebody, which is actually kind of a massive thing. Hopefully they make it a bit more clear, but I cannot expect anything than a massive nerf for Zinx, at least for the ultimate. And maybe passive. The passive also kind of goes crazy. And can we just talk that she actually does pretty decent in mid lane? Like, she actually does pretty well in mid lane. I also see a few people playing her in off lane, which maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I cannot really tell so far, but if with the hero being so nuts right now, I can understand why people are getting success with it in other roles. But yeah, she is still primarily a support. I recommend her playing support because she's completely broken in support. She's very good early game laner. She skills very well as well. And that ultimate is completely broken. So yeah, this was my tier list for patch V1.0. Let me know what you guys think. I think honestly this has been one of my better tier lists. I think I've been completely fair on majority of these picks. I kind of didn't want to add a situational tier, but because we're getting a lot more heroes now in these patches, I did decide to add a situational tier, being C tier, which you could say some of those heroes deserve to be A, some of those heroes deserve to be B, maybe some of those deserve to be D tier, but that's for you guys to decide. I think I've done a pretty good job at explaining my thoughts about all of them. Thank you all for watching. I will see you guys tomorrow for another Predecessor gameplay video. Peace out, gamers, and have a good one.